Good morning, students. So today we will be talking about drugs used in reproductive health, estrogen, progestin, and this chapter is also about the contraceptives which we use. So that will be dealt in the next chapter, as well as about antiprogestin. So starting with estrogens. So estrogens are naturally occurring female sex hormones. So mainly they are secreted from the ovaries, the adrenal gland, placenta, fat cells, a little amount from the fat cells, and breast tissue. So estrogen receptors, so there are two types of estrogen receptors, ER alpha and ER beta. Most of the tissues, they have both the receptors. ER alpha, amongst these, ER alpha is present in vagina, ovary, uterus, breast, hypothalamus, pituitary, and blood vessels. And ER beta receptors are present in prostate and ovaries. So mechanism of action. When we are talking about the mechanism of action, so we will discuss in general about estrogen as well as progesterone. So that progesterone mechanism of action will not be taught again later. So steroid hormones, if we see here in this image, steroid hormones are lipid soluble. When I am saying steroid hormones, they include estrogen, progesterone, testosterone, glucocorticoids, mineralocorticoids. But here we are speaking about today estrogen and progesterone. So the red spot you can see here is the steroid hormone, say estrogen or progesterone. So because it is lipid soluble, it can cross the cell membrane and bind to the receptor which is present in the cytosol. The receptor is in blue color. So here we can see the formation of a hormone receptor complex. So this hormone receptor complex, this enters the nucleus where it binds to specific sites on the DNA strand, specific hormone responsive elements. Estrogen responsive element or progesterone responsive element. So after binding to the DNA, mRNA is formed. The mRNA that is synthesized in the nucleus, it leaves the nucleus, enters the cytoplasm where it is translated to the desired protein. The green color you can see there is the protein. So this is the mechanism of action of estrogen. So this entire mechanism, after these effects, after this formation of the desired protein, the particular desired effect occurs in the body. So these are what we call genomic effects. So there are some non-genomic effects as well, which cannot be explained by this mechanism of action because they occur in few minutes. One such example is, one such example of non-genomic effect of estrogen is that is mediated by ER alpha. The nitric oxide synthase, which is released from the endothelium, it results in vasodilatation and has cardioprotective effect. So this is one non-genomic effect of estrogen which cannot be explained by this transcriptional activation. So before going into the details of the preparations of estrogen, their uses and their adverse effects, let us go through the reproductive cycle which occurs in a female and what are the levels of the hormones before ovulation, after ovulation, what are the gonadotropin levels in the body before ovulation, after ovulation. So we'll just go through that. So in this image, if you see, the reproductive cycle in a woman lasts for about 28 days, starting from 1 to 28. So here if we see the menstrual cycle, it lasts from 1 to 5 days. Then the pre-ovulatory or the follicular phase, it lasts from 6 to 13 days. Then we have the post-ovulatory or luteal phase, which lasts from 14 to 28 days. So here, by the end of the menstrual cycle, say after 28 days, if you can see, estrogen is shown here in red line and progesterone in green line. So the levels of estrogen, progesterone become quite low at the end of the menstrual cycle. So under the influence of low estrogen, progesterone levels, the FSH level, which is shown in the purple line, it starts rising. So because of the rising FSH levels, that promotes the development of primary follicles in the ovary, which develop into secondary follicles. Now these follicles which are growing, they secrete estrogen. So here you can see the estrogen level is increasing in the pre-ovulatory phase because of the follicles which are secreting estrogen. So now this increased estrogen levels again exerts a negative feedback on the pituitary, which decreases the FSH levels gradually. So because of the decreasing FSH levels, the developed secondary follicles again degenerate, leaving only one follicle to develop. That is what we call the Graafian follicle. So the Graafian follicle secretes its own estrogen. So the estrogen which is used in its own growth and development. Now what happens to the Graafian follicle near to the ovulation time? The increased estrogen levels exerts a paradoxical feedback effect on the positive feedback effect on the pituitary, which leads to increased levels of LH. So that is what we call the LH surge. So the LH surge triggers ovulation to occur. So Graafian follicle ruptures, leading to the release of ovum in the body, in the near to the fallopian tube, so where it is taken in. Then the ruptured Graafian follicle, it collapses and forms the corpus luteum. So this is what happens before ovulation, that is in the follicular or the pre-ovulatory phase. So here if you see, the dominant hormone is estrogen and the dominant gonadotropin is FSH. But near to ovulation, the dominant gonadotropin becomes LH. So after ovulation, the Graafian follicle which has collapsed forms the corpus luteum. So this corpus luteum, under the effect of LH, it secretes estrogen and progesterone hormones, mostly progesterone. So if you can see, the progesterone and estrogen levels are increasing in the luteal phase of the reproductive cycle. This phase we also call it as the luteal phase, which lasts from 14 to 28 days. We also call it as the post-ovulatory phase. Now here, if you see, the dominant hormone here is progesterone. So now the corpus luteum is secreting the hormones progesterone and estrogen. So now we will see what will be the fate of the corpus luteum if fertilization occurs and if fertilization does not occur. If fertilization occurs, the corpus luteum is maintained by the HCG, which is secreted by the fetus. So the corpus luteum is maintained. It secretes the estrogen progesterone till the placenta can take over in the second trimester, where the placenta will produce the progesterone necessary to maintain the pregnancy. What happens if the fertilization does not occur? Then the increased estrogen progesterone levels in the second half, they exert a negative feedback effect on the hypothalamus, decreasing the GnRH and the LH levels. So since the LH level has fallen down, the corpus luteum degenerates and the progesterone and estrogen levels come down by the end of the reproductive cycle, that is at 28th day. Then again, a new cycle begins. So this is about the reproductive cycle in detail. Then coming to the actions of estrogen, first action is growth and development of female reproductive organs and secondary sexual characteristics. Proliferative phase of the menstrual cycle. See here, the estrogen hormone, it causes proliferation of the uterine endometrium. That is seen in the follicular phase or the pre-ovulatory phase, where the uterine endometrium proliferates. Then it contracts the fallopian tube and myometrium rhythmically. It makes the cervical secretion thin, watery and alkaline, which is favorable for sperm penetration. Promotes the growth of breast tissue, specifically ducts. Prevents osteoporosis in premenopausal women. See, estrogen, it increases the osteoblastic activity and decreases the osteoclastic activity. So osteoblasts are those which form the bone. So here it prevents osteoporosis, or it maintains bone health in premenopausal women. It increases HDL and decreases LDL. So it has a cardioprotective effect. It has a mineralocorticoid effect as well. It causes sodium and water retention, leading to edema. It increases coagulability by increasing factor 2, 7, 9, 10 and decreases antithrombin 3. It will induce progesterone receptor synthesis. So in other words, it will increase the action of progesterone because it is increasing the progesterone receptor synthesis. So this is vice versa, not vice versa. It has an opposite effect. Estrogen increases the progesterone receptor synthesis, whereas progesterone decreases the estrogen receptor synthesis. So we will discuss this again in progesterone, actions of progesterone. So for now, remember that it will induce progesterone receptor synthesis. Feedback effect. So we know that hypothalamus releases the GnRH, gonadotropin. So this GnRH acts on the anterior pituitary, which will trigger the release of FSH and LH. So this FSH, it acts on the, it causes the development of the follicles which release estrogen. This estrogen in turn again exerts negative feedback only on the pituitary, and it decreases the release of FSH and LH. So this is the feedback effect of estrogen. Estrogen preparations. So estrogen preparations are natural and synthetic compounds. Synthetic are again divided into steroidal and non-steroidal. So natural steroidal estrogen, estradiol benzoate, cypionate, enanthate, valerate, estron, estriol. Synthetic steroidal estrogens are ethinyl estradiol, mestranol, quinesterol, and tibolone. Synthetic non-steroidal estrogens are diethylstilbestrol, dinestrol, chlorotrianosine, methylenestrel. Conjugated estrogens are sodium estrone sulfate plus sodium equivalent sulfate. The pharmacokinetics of estrogen. Natural estrogens are orally inactive. So what do you mean by that? They have a higher rate of first pass metabolism. So because of that, the amount of drug that is available to produce the therapeutic effect decreases. So we call them as orally inactive. So in order to avoid that, you can prefer routes other than oral routes like vaginal, transdermal or injection routes. And synthetic ones are orally active. So their first pass metabolism is less, so they can be given orally. Estradiol is converted by liver and other tissues to weaker estron and estriol. So here, they are converted to 2-hydroxy derivatives and conjugated metabolites, which are excreted in the bile. So there, the conjugated metabolites are again hydrolyzed in the intestine to active estrogen, which undergo enterohepatic circulation. So this enterohepatic circulation of estrogens is responsible for the high ratio of hepatic to peripheral effects. So the hepatic effects are the high ratio of hepatic effects are the reason for the side effects like hepatic adenoma. Then we have DVT, thromboembolic disorders. Yes. Then coming to the indications of estrogens. See the names, the indications which I have highlighted in red, these are important. Hormone replacement therapy, primary ovarian failure, dysmenorrhea, dysfunctional uterine bleeding. Then senile vaginitis, acne, carcinoma prostate are also other indications. Most important is hormone replacement therapy. So this is mainly used to treat the 5 common symptoms associated in postmenopausal women. So what are the 5 common symptoms associated with menopause? Osteoporosis, vasomotor disorders, cardiovascular problems, urogenital atrophy, neuroprotective and CNS effects. So these are the 5 common symptoms in menopausal women. So estrogen is mainly used to treat these conditions here. Osteoporosis, if you take, since there is estrogen and progesterone are less in menopausal women, their bone health is deteriorated. Estrogen maintains the bone health. So there is 25% increased risk of hip fractures in menopausal women. So what you give here is conjugated equine estrogen, 0.625 mg per day, or a transdermal patch of estradiol. The estrogen should be given in a cyclic manner followed by 7 to 10 days treatment with progestin. So this is because if the uterus is intact in the patient, estrogen may result in endometrial carcinoma because it causes proliferation of the endometrium. So there it is better to give it in cyclic manner along with progestin. But if in case the person in the patient hysterectomy has already been done, then estrogen can be given alone. Vasomotor disorders. So these are what we call, what they complain as hot flushes. So hot flushes are mainly because of the increase in LH in those people because of the lack of estrogen. Because estrogen normally exerts a negative feedback. Since estrogen is no more available, there is increase in LH that leads to hot flushes. So here you can give short-term conjugated equine estrogen for about 2 to 3 years. So why do we say here short term? Because these symptoms last only for a short term, for about 2 to 3 years. And also short term therapy is associated with less risk of endometrial cancer. Then coming to cardiovascular problems, estrogen, though it has a cardioprotective effect, use of HRT for prevention of coronary vascular disease is controversial. Urogenital atrophy. Due to lack of estrogen, there is atrophy of the distal vagina in the postmenopausal woman. So estrogen can be administered orally or topically, while progestin is given orally. Neuroprotective and CNS effects. So hormone replacement therapy lessens the symptoms like insomnia, fatigue and migraine in postmenopausal women. And also they improve the cognitive abilities in postmenopausal women suffering from Alzheimer's disease. Estrogen replacement therapy in primary ovarian failure. So primary ovarian failure, it can be because of ovarian dysgenesis or it can be because of hypopituitarism. So treatment for both these conditions, treatment starts at the age of 13 to 14 years with smaller dose of estrogen in cyclic pattern. So here you give ethinyl estradiol 0.01 mg for 3 weeks every month for 4 months. And then 0.02 mg for 3 weeks every month for about 1 year. So once you start giving estrogen and that results in the development of pubertal and sexual characteristics, then progesterone is added in the last week of every month to induce regular menstrual bleeding. So in other words, you're inducing a hormone pattern which you can see in an individual with normal ovarian development. So here, since there is a failure, ovarian failure, so you replace the hormones in such a way that they resemble the normal pattern. So you can as well add androgens in the treatment regimen to promote height and normal growth. See, the other uses are dysmenorrhea and dysfunctional uterine bleeding. So dysmenorrhea is sometimes menstruation is associated with discomfort and pain. So that is mainly because of increase in the prostaglandin release in the endometrium. So here the primary treatment will be NSAIDs like flufenamic acid or aspirin can be used, but cyclic treatment, treatment with estrogen is given occasionally in some patients. Then dysfunctional uterine bleeding, it is a painless bleeding which is due to chronic anovulatory circles. So this occurs mainly because of disturbance in the sequence of the follicular phase or the luteal phase. So here you can give a progestin cyclically until the bleeding is controlled. Then to prevent recurrences, you can give estrogen, a combination of estrogen progesterone for about a few months till the cycle is normalized. So this is about the indications of estrogen. Then coming to the side effects of estrogen. So if you see here, in males, it is suppression of libido, gynecomastia, and feminization. In children, there is fusion of epiphysis and reduction of adult stature. Postmenopausal women or on HRT, risk of irregular bleeding and endometrial carcinoma. Existing breast cancer, growth of existing breast cancer. Women under long-term estrogen therapy, increased incidence of gallstones and benign hepatoma. Comorbidity, worsening of migraine, epilepsy, and endometriosis. Pregnant woman, if it is given in pregnant woman, and the pregnant woman, see, there is vaginal and cervical carcinoma in the female offspring in childhood or early adulthood. If the pregnant woman gives birth to a female child, so there is increased risk of vaginal and cervical carcinoma later in life, either in early childhood or in early adulthood. Contraindications. So it is contraindicated in pregnancy. So we've already seen that. What will happen if we give in pregnancy? Then thromboembolic disorders. See, estrogen itself causes a thromboembolic episode in the body. So if the person has a pre-existing thromboembolic disorder, don't prefer giving estrogen. Then diabetes, because estrogen causes hyperglycemia, it is not preferred in diabetics. Hepatic failure, estrogen itself leads to hepatic failure. So if it is a pre-existing condition, better not give. Then estrogen-dependent carcinoma of breast, endometrial cancer, endometriosis. So all these are aggravated in an estrogen environment. So don't prefer giving. And undiagnosed genital bleeding. All these are the contraindications. Then coming to drug interactions, high dose of estrogen should be given along with antibiotics. See here, antibiotics, they disturb the normal bacterial flora, because of which the enterohepatic circulation of estrogens is reduced. So you need to give a higher dose of estrogen to get the same effect. Enzyme inducers like rifampicin, phenytoin, carbamazepine, and barbiturates increase their mechanism, increase their metabolism, and decrease their effectiveness. So you have to give a higher dose of estrogen. Dose of insulin or oral hypoglycemics have to be increased in the presence of estrogen. So this is because estrogen causes hyperglycemia. So you need to increase the dose of insulin or oral hypoglycemics. The selective estrogen receptor modulators. So these are non-steroidal synthetic derivatives, and their agonist or antagonist activity on the estrogen receptor. So they have both agonist and antagonist activity on the estrogen receptor. So that particular action is tissue selective. On some tissues, they have agonist action. On some other tissues, they have antagonist action. So what are the drugs that come under SERM? So we have a number of drugs like clomiphene, tamoxifen, doloxifene, toremifene, raloxifene, or meloxifene. So let us go through them one by one. So clomiphene, here you call clomiphene as an anti-estrogen as well, because clomiphene, it has shown agonist activity in some animals, but in humans, it exerts antagonist activity. So you can call it as an anti-estrogen rather than a SERM. So it is a competitive antagonist of estrogen receptor in the hypothalamus. So because it is blocking the estrogen receptor in the hypothalamus, the estrogen cannot go and act on the receptor. In other words, it cannot exert a negative feedback mechanism. So there is an increase in the pulse frequency of GnRH, and which leads to an increase in FSH and LH. So that helps in increasing the ovulation. So FSH causes development of the follicles. So this leads to increase in the ovulation. So where can it be useful? So used for infertility due to failure of ovulation. It can aid in vitro fertilization. Then it can be used for oligozoospermia in males. Then coming to the adverse effects. In adverse effects, so it causes twin pregnancy or multiple pregnancy, ovarian enlargement, polycystic ovaries, hot flushes, weight gain, reversible alopecia, and vertigo. We have fulvestrant. It is a selective estrogen receptor downregulator. So it downregulates estrogen receptors. How does it downregulate? It promotes the degradation of them by proteasomal enzymes. It is used for metastatic estrogen receptor positive breast cancer in postmenopausal women which has stopped responding to tamoxifen. So tamoxifen, doloxifen, toremifene. So these drugs exert both estrogenic and anti-estrogenic actions in a tissue-dependent manner. So we can call these as SERMs, selective estrogen receptor modulators. So tamoxifen has antagonist action in breast carcinoma cells and blood vessels. It has partial agonist activity on uterus, bone, liver and pituitary. So since it has antagonist action in the breast carcinoma cells, it is mainly used in the treatment for breast cancer in both pre and postmenopausal women. What are the other uses? Primary prophylaxis of breast cancer in high-risk women as an alternative to clomiphene in male infertility, prevents postmenopausal osteoporosis. See, it has an agonist activity on bone. So what is the estrogen agonist activity on bone? It maintains the bone health by increasing the osteoblastic activity. So it is used in the treatment of osteoporosis. Improvement in lipid profile and lowering of coronary artery diseases. See, the main uses here will be for treating breast cancer and for osteoporosis. Adverse effects are hot flushes, vomiting, menstrual irregularities, anorexia, mild leukopenia and mild ocular effects. The next two adverse effects are, you can explain it by the agonist action on uterus and the blood coagulation factors. So it increases, estrogen increases the risk of endometrial cancer and deep vein thrombosis. Doloxifen and toremifene are structurally related to tamoxifen with similar pharmacological properties, indications and toxicity. Coming to one more important drug, that is raloxifene. See, this exerts antagonist action on the endometrial as well as the breast tissue, and it has agonist action in bone, lipid metabolism and blood coagulation. So it can be used to reduce the risk of breast cancer by 65 to 70%, especially in estrogen receptor positive breast cancer. So this is again because it has antagonist action on the breast tissue. It is used as a second-line drug for prevention and treatment of osteoporosis in postmenopausal women. See, this drug exhibits a high first-pass metabolism because of which its bioavailability is very poor. It has a large volume of distribution. It has a long plasma half-life because of which it can be given as a single dose per day, 60 mg dose per day. Then adverse effects are hot flushes, leg cramps, increased risk of DVT and pulmonary embolism. Then coming to ormeloxifene. Ormeloxifene, it exhibits mainly estrogen antagonist action in the breast and uterus. So this has mainly been approved for the treatment of dysfunctional uterine bleeding associated with anovulatory cycles. It is used as non-hormonal oral contraceptive because it has both anti-estrogenic and anti-progestogenic action. So it comes with the name Cellproman. It is being investigated since it has antagonist action in the breast and uterus. It is being investigated for the management of breast and endometrial cancer, and also it is being investigated for the management of osteoporosis. But its main use is as a non-hormonal oral contraceptive. Adverse effects are nausea, headache, fluid retention and weight gain. So next group of drugs are aromatase inhibitors. So they inhibit the enzyme aromatase, which is responsible for the conversion of testosterone to estradiol in the body. So again, these are of two generations. First generation, aminoglutathamide comes under the first generation. Then in the second generation, we have again drugs which are steroidal and others which are non-steroidal. Non-steroidal drugs in the second generation are anastrozole, letrozole, fadrazole and morozole. Then steroidal drugs in the second generation are formastine and exemestane. So these are mainly used for estrogen receptor expressing breast carcinoma that is resistant to tamoxifen. So it is also used in treating precocious puberty and excessive aromatase syndrome. So these are used as adjuncts to androgen antagonists in the treatment of precocious puberty and as primary treatment of excessive aromatase syndrome. Adverse effects are hot flushes, joint pain and thromboembolic disease. So this is about estrogens. When coming to progestins, progestin is also a natural sex hormone which is present in the body. So what are its main actions? So we know that estrogen primarily converts the endometrium of the uterus. It converts it into a proliferative endometrium. So what does progestin do? It converts the estrogen primed proliferative endometrium to secretory endometrium and it maintains pregnancy. So these are the two main actions of progestin. So natural progestin is progesterone. It is secreted from, as we have already discussed this, we have seen this in the reproductive cycle. It is secreted from corpus luteum post-ovulation and immediately after fertilization till the corpus luteum is sustained by chorionic gonadotropins released by the blastocyst. Then later what happens in the second and third trimester, it is taken over by the placenta. So the placenta is the main source for progesterone in the second and third trimester. Then from adrenals and testes in men, where the role is not known. So receptors of progesterone, just like estrogen, there are two receptors of progesterone, PR alpha and PR beta. They are mainly confined to the female genital tract, breast, pituitary and the CNS. All agonists and antagonists display similar binding properties to both the receptors. Say about the mechanism of action and the levels of progesterone in the human reproductive cycle we have already discussed. So then let us go through the progestin preparations. So progestin derivatives, progesterone derivatives, medroxyprogesterone acetate, megestrol acetate, dihydrogesterone, hydroxyprogesterone caproate, nomegestrol acetate. So these are pure progestins with weak androgenic and anti-ovulatory activity. 19 non-testosterone derivatives, older compounds and newer compounds. So here in older compounds we have norethindrone, norethinodril, linestrenol, allelestrenol, norgestrel and levonorgestrel. So these compounds have weak estrogenic, androgenic, anabolic and potent ovulatory action. So newer compounds are desogestrel, norgestimate and gestodin. So here these drugs, the difference is they have little or no androgenic property, still retaining the strong anti-ovulatory action. So where they are preferable in women with hyperandrogenemia. Actions of progestin. So it decreases, this action is opposite to the estrogen action. It decreases the fallopian tube motility and decreases the uterine contractions, thus promoting pregnancy. In other words, it is used for maintaining the pregnancy. It causes cervical mucus to become thick, viscous and acidic, and it is hostile to sperm penetration. It stimulates SNS proliferation in the breast and prepares the mother for lactation. It causes hyperglycemia on long-term use. It increases the LDL levels, but this is good for the fetus because it helps in developing the cell membranes in the fetus. Favors fat deposition by increasing the lipoprotein lipase activity. It has mineralocorticoid activity, causes sodium and water retention leading to edema. It increases the body temperature. It inhibits the synthesis of estrogen receptors. If you remember this, We've discussed in estrogen as well. Whereas estrogen increases the synthesis of progesterone receptors, progesterone inhibits the synthesis of estrogen receptors. So this concept is very important while trying to understand the use of progesterone in treating endometriosis. In contrast to estrogen, it has negative feedback effect on both hypothalamus and pituitary. It decreases the FSH and LH, and so it decreases the ovulation. So progesterone pharmacokinetic parameters are, it is inactive orally. This also has a high first pass metabolism. So it is given intramuscularly as an oily preparation, injected intramuscularly as oily preparation. For oral administration, micronized formulations are available. It has a short half-life of 5 to 7 minutes. It is converted to pregnenolone in the liver, excreted in the urine as pregnenolone glucuronide. Synthetic progestins are orally active, metabolize slowly, and they have a longer half-life. Indications of progesterone are, it is mainly used as a contraceptive. So this we will go in detail, we'll go through this in detail in the next topic, contraceptives. So for now, remember the indication of progesterone is contraception. Then it is also used in hormone replacement therapy. So dysfunctional uterine bleeding, I've already explained, it is a painless bleeding due to chronic anovulation. So here you can give norethindrone 20 to 40 mg per day, which normalizes the bleeding. Then it can be given cyclically with estrogen to regularize and normalize the menstrual flow. Then it is also used in endometriosis. See, endometriosis is a condition where there is ectopic endometrial tissue outside the uterus, and that particular ectopic tissue, it thrives on estrogen-rich environment. So what should be your goal there? You have to provide an estrogen-free environment. So when you're giving progesterone, it decreases the synthesis of estrogen receptors, thus decreasing the action of estrogen. And so the ectopic endometrial tissue cannot survive. Then it can be used diagnostically to test estrogen secretion and endometrial responsiveness. So here you can give medroxyprogesterone 10 mg per day for 5 to 7 days. Then this is followed by withdrawal bleeding, which can occur only when the uterus, it has been primed with estrogen, because estrogen causes proliferation of the uterine endometrium. So it can be used diagnostically to test estrogen secretion and endometrial responsiveness. Premenstrual syndrome or premenstrual tension syndrome. See here, both estrogen and progesterone can be given in combination to treat this. Premenstrual tension syndrome is nothing but it is because of increase in the prostaglandins during ovulation. That leads to headache, backache, irritability, fluid retention. So by giving a combination of estrogen and progesterone, you can prevent ovulation to occur and decrease the release of prostaglandins. Then in inoperable endometrial carcinoma, it can be used for palliative treatment. So what are the side effects of progestins? The general side effects: breast engorgement, headache, rise in body temperature, edema, esophageal reflux, acne, mood swings with higher doses, irregular bleeding or amenorrhea on continuous administration. Then lowers plasma HDL levels. It promotes atherogenesis, impaired glucose tolerance, and it precipitates diabetes. On long-term administration, there is increased risk of breast cancer. Contraindications and drug interactions.